In this recording, we're going to discuss the epidermis. The epidermis is your most superficial layer of skin. It has several cell types, but the most numerous you will find are keratinocytes. These make up about 95% of the epidermis, and they have two structural features that make them useful to us. They make your epidermis stronger and less susceptible to mechanical damage. The first one is the keratin that you find within the keratinocytes themselves. This is a tough fibrous protein that makes your epidermis more resistant to mechanical traumas. And the fact that your keratinocytes are linked together by desmosomes. You may or may not remember our discussion on cell junctions, which included desmosomes, but one of their main features was literally to link adjacent cells to each other to make the connection more strong. Now, the keratinocytes, we arrange them in layers, and from superficial to deep, we can have up to 5 layers. Okay? We call these strata, which is plural, or stratum is singular. And if we start at the bottom, we have the stratum basal, or the stratum germinavatum, which is hard to say. This is a single layer of stem cells. Okay, so stem cells are really useful because they can basically become anything that you want them or need them to be. So in this case, they're going to become cells of your skin, but if we found stem cells in other locations in your body, then they would be able to become other types of cells that you might need in other locations of your body. So stem cells are pretty cool. So this layer, the basal layer, rests on your basement membrane. It is the layer that's most close to the blood supply coming from your dermis. And so these stem cells are both metabolically and mitotically active, which means they are alive and they are dividing. Okay. As we move up, okay, as we're starting deep, okay, I should have pointed that out. So this basal layer, this is the deepest layer of your epidermis, and we're going to go up. We're going to go superficial. So right above that is your stratum spinosum layer. This is the thickest layer of your epidermis. It does sit right on top of your basal layer. It is still close enough to your blood supply to be both metabolically and mitotically active also. What are we really getting at here? We're getting at the cells in these two layers are still alive. Okay, they're still alive. They're still getting the nutrients they need from the dermal layer to stay alive. Now, if we go up one more layer, stratum granulosum. This is anywhere between 3 to 5 distinct layers of cells. This is where the keratin starts coming into place, or some of the cells and layers have more of a lipid-based substance, which provides for waterproofing. Okay. By the time we get to your stratum granulosum layer, we're starting to really struggle to get the nutrients that we need diffusing upwards into these high layers. So when we get to these last couple of layers, all of these cells will be dead by then. If we continue upwards, we hit the stratum lucidum layer. This is actually a very skinny layer. It's very narrow. It's full of clear, dead keratinocytes. This is only found in thick skin. So this is kind of it's almost a misnomer, because you want to say, oh, well, it's in thick skin, it must be a thick layer, but it's actually not. It's actually a really skinny layer. So I feel like they should have named it something a little bit better, but that's okay. It just is what it is. But by the time we get here, these are dead. All right, all of these cells are dead. Last but not least, the very top layer, the one that you can actually touch, is your stratum corneum. And this consists of several layers of the dead keratinocytes. They have been flattened by the time they get up here as well. Their plasma membranes are full of those keratin bundles, which provide for the resistance to the mechanical stress as well. So let's look real quick. We've got our cartoon picture here. Okay, if we start at the bottom, we've got this skinny little layer of these basal cells. We can see our dividing keratinocytes. Look at this mitosis, y'all. I know you remember mitosis. Okay, so we've got these stem cells here. As they grow and divide, they push upwards. Okay, the old cells get pushed upwards. We're gonna make our spinosum layer next. Notice this is our thick layer. Okay, we are still close enough to the dermis, which is this lighter pink layer down here. Remember, this is where all our blood vessels are going to be getting our nutrients from. These are still close enough to where these cells are alive too. This granulosum layer, this is where we start dying off and we start trading mitotic and metabolic activities. Instead, we're going to start filling these cells with the keratin and go to the waterproofing and the strengthening instead. This lucidum layer that we said is only found in thick skin, notice it is really a skinny layer. Okay, and then last but not least, that stratum corneum. This is the one that we touch. You can see sloughing keratinocytes. So anytime you lose a little bit of dead skin after the shower or whatever you've been doing, this is where those dead cells are coming from. In our real life picture over here, it's a little bit more difficult to really distinguish the basal layer from the spinosum layer, things like that, but they all are here, all 5 of them. Okay, but this is just kind of FYI for comparison. Okay. Now, we don't just have keratinocytes. Remember, we said that was like 95%. We got another 5% out there to talk about. We've got a few other cells that make up your epidermis. You've got dendritic cells. Sometimes they're called Langerhans cells, but your dendritic cells are located in your spinosum layer specifically, and these are phagocytes from your immune system. They are there to protect your skin and deeper tissues from pathogen infection. And so if you, and then here's one, this little blue one right here. So if you envision maybe you have a paper cut, okay, if it goes down to the layer of the spinosum and we've maybe got bacteria that came in as well, the idea is that these dendritic cells will hopefully be able to come across any invading pathogens in here, and they'll just be able to phagocytize them without them trying to get to that dermal layer and make their way into the blood and stuff like that. So it might not be perfect, but at least it is one source of defense for our immune response. Then we have Merkel cells. These are scattered through your basal layer. These are sensory receptors. You also have these that are associated with neurons in your dermis as well. So you find these in 2 different places. They are specifically designed to detect light touch and discriminate shapes and textures. Okay. You find a lot of these, okay, you find them in large numbers in places that do a lot of touching, like your fingertips, your lips, even the bases of your hairs, and that one's kind of a little bit weird, but you know, we eat all the time and we touch things all the time, and so that should make sense to us. And then we have melanocytes. Melanocytes are in your basal layer only. They produce melanin, which you may or may not be familiar with, but this is one of the skin pigments that provide you with the overall skin tone that you have. And these come, some of this melanin comes in like an orangish red shade, a brownish black shade. There's a variety, okay? It's not just one set color. And the melanin acts with a couple other pigments to create your overall skin tone. Yeah, we mentioned thick skin a minute ago when we talked about that stratum lucidum layer, but here we are, we're back to it. You only find thick skin on 2 places in your whole body. You've got it on your palms of your hands and the soles of your feet. And remember I told you that it's kind of a bad name. It's not named very well. It's kind of a misnomer because the lucidum layer is not very thick, and we're saying this is thick skin. Y'all, thick as a paper towel. Unless y'all are using some kind of paper towel that I've never seen before. Paper towels aren't very thick, and yet that's what we're saying when we talk about thick skin. It's a paper towel thick. You do have all 5 of those layers there, okay? The stratum corneum, that top layer, that is extra thick here, okay? That's where we're getting this idea of thick skin from. It's not that lucidum layer, which again, I know that that's kind of weird, just is what it is. You may or may not have ever noticed, but you do not have hair follicles on your palms or on your soles. You do not grow hair on your palms. You might grow hair on the back of your hand, okay, or the top of your foot, but you do not have hair on your palms and your soles. You do, however, have a lot of sweat glands. And so you at some point have probably suffered from sweaty hands and or sweaty feet, and this is why. Now, since thick skin is only on your palms and your soles, what covers the rest of your body? That would be your thin skin, okay? Why the difference? Because your palms and your soles are most subjected to your mechanical stress. So we need that extra thick corneum layer. Thin skin, not quite so much. It's not that we don't have any mechanical stress on the rest of our bodies. It's just not as much as what our palms and our soles go through. And so thick, remember thick was a paper towel. Thin is about as thick as a sheet of printer paper. So again, we are comparing a printer paper to a paper towel, y'all. That's it. There's not a whole lot of difference. This only has the 4 layers. Remember, the stratum lucidum is not found in the thin skin. Okay. Not only are we missing a layer entirely of that lucidum, but the other 4 layers, they are thinner compared to the thick skin layers. And you do have hair here, as well as sweat glands and sebaceous glands, or your oil glands. Okay, so you do find all of your accessory structures in thin skin. And we can compare. So we've got our dermis, that's no big deal. Our basal layer is still really skinny. Our spinosum layer is a little bit thicker in thick skin. You do have that lucidum layer here also in your thick skin, but this stratum corneum, this is where that extra thickness comes from. See how large it is here and how not large it is in comparison to your thin skin. Notice we've lost our hairs on the thick skin. We've only got the sweat glands, but we have all of our accessory organs on the thin skin.